Roy was such a junk hog that Herman and I had to shoot more than we needed to keep up with him and get our share. I began shooting in the main line to save stuff, and because the immediate kick was better, we were having trouble filling the scripts. Most drugstores will only fill a morphine script once or twice. Many, not at all. There was one drugstore that would fill all our scripts anytime, and we took them all there. Though Roy said we ought to spread them out so they would be harder for the inspector to find. It was too much trouble to walk around from drugstore to drugstore, so we usually ended up taking them to the same place. I was learning to hide my stuff carefully, stash it, as they say in the trade, so Roy and Herman couldn't find it and take some. Taking junk hidden by another junkie is known as making him for his stash. It's difficult to guard against this form of theft because junkies know where to look for a stash. Some people carry their junk around with them, but a man who does that is subject to a charge of possession in the event of search by the law. As I began using stuff every day, or often several times a day, I stopped drinking and going out at night. When you use junk, you don't drink. Seemingly, the body that has a quantity of junk in its cells will not absorb alcohol. The liquor stays in the stomach, slowly building up nausea, discomfort, dizziness, and there is no kick. Using junk would be a sure cure for alcoholics. I also stopped bathing. When you use junk, the feel of water on the skin is unpleasant for some reason, and junkies are reluctant to take a bath. A lot of nonsense has been written about the changes people undergo as they get a habit. All of a sudden, the addict looks in the mirror and does not recognize himself. The actual changes are difficult to specify, and they do not show up in the mirror. That is, the addict himself has a special blind spot as far as the progress of his habit is concerned. He generally does not realize that he is getting a habit at all. He says there's no need to get a habit if you're careful and observe a few rules like shooting every other day. Actually, he does not observe these rules, but every extra shot is regarded as exceptional. I have talked to many addicts, and they all say they were surprised when they discovered they actually had the first habit. Many of them attributed their symptoms to some other cause. As the habit takes hold, life telescopes down to junk. One fix and looking forward to the next. Stashes and scripts, spikes and droppers. The addict himself often feels that he is leading a normal life, and the junk is incidental. He does not realize that he is just going through the motions in his non-junk activities. It is not until his supply is cut off that he realizes what junk means to him. Why do you need narcotics, Mr. Lee? Is a question that stupid psychiatrists ask. The answer is, I need junk to get out of bed in the morning, to shave and eat breakfast. I need it to stay alive. All croakers pack in sooner or later. One day when Roy came for his script, the doctor told him, now this is positively the last, and you guys had better keep out of sight. The inspector was around to see me yesterday. He has all the RXs I wrote for you guys. He told me I'll lose my license if I write it anymore. So I'm gonna date this one back. Tell the druggist you were too sick yesterday to cash it. You guys gave some wrong addresses on those scripts, and that's a violation of Public Health Law 334. So don't say I didn't warn you. For God's sakes, cover up for me if they question you. This could mean my whole professional career. You know I've always been right with you boys. I wanted to stop months ago. I just couldn't leave you guys stranded. So give me a break. Here's the script, and don't come back. Our croaker had packed in. We split up to comb the city. We covered Brooklyn, the Bronx, Queens, Jersey City, and Newark. We couldn't even score for Pentapon. It seemed like the doctors were all expecting us, just waiting for us to walk into the office so they could say absolutely no. It was as though every doctor in greater New York had suddenly taken a pledge never to write another narcotic script. We were running out of junk. Patently, we would be immobilized in a matter of hours. Roy decided to throw in the towel and go to Rikers Island for the 30-day cure. This is not a reduction cure. They don't give any junk, not even a sleeping tablet. All they offer the addict is 30 days detention. The place is always full. Herman got picked up in the Bronx while he was looking for a croaker. No definite charge, just two detectives didn't like his looks. When they got him downtown, they found out the narcotics squad had a warrant for him sworn out by the state inspector. The charge was wrong address on a narcotics script. Some wagon-chasing lawyer called me up and asked if I could put up the money to buy Herman a bond. I sent $2 for cigarettes instead. If a man's going to do time, he might as well start doing it. I was all out of junk at this point and had double-boiled my last cottons. Junk is cooked up in a spoon and sucked into the dropper through a little piece of cotton to get it all out of the spoon. Some of the solution stays in the cotton, and addicts save their cottons for emergencies. When I heard one day that Herman had been arrested, I figured I would be next. But I was already sick and did not have the energy to leave town. I was arrested at my apartment by two detectives and a federal agent. The state inspector has sworn out a warrant charging me with a violation of Public Health Law 334 for giving a wrong name on a prescription. The two detectives were the con man and tough guy team. The con man was asking me, "How long you been using junk, Bill? You know you ought to give a right name on those scripts." Then the tough guy would break in. Come on, we're not Boy Scouts." But they were not much interested in the case, and a statement from me was not necessary. I was taken to the tombs, mugged and fingerprinted. While I was waiting to go before the judge, the con man gave me a cigarette and began telling me what a bad deal junk is. Even if you get by with it 30 years, you're only kidding yourself. Now you take those sex degenerates. His eyes glistened. The doctors say they can't help themselves. The judge set bail at $1,000. I was taken back to the tombs, ordered to take off my clothes and get under the shower. An apathetic guard poked through my clothes. I got dressed again, went up in the elevator, and was assigned to a cell. The last of the codeine was running out. My nose and eyes began to run. Sweat soaked through my clothes. Hot and cold flashes hit me as though a furnace door was swinging open and shut. I lay down on the bunk too weak to move. My legs ached and twitched so that any position was intolerable. And I moved from one side to the other, sloshing about in my sweaty clothes. A negro voice was singing, get up, woman, off your big, fat, rusty, dusty." Voices drifted back and forth. 40 years, man, I can't do no 40 years. At 12 that night, my old lady bailed me out and met me at the door with some goofballs. Goofballs help a little. Next day, I was worse and could not get out of bed, so I stayed in bed taking Nambies at intervals. At night, I would take 2 strips of Benzedrine and go out to a bar where I sat right by the jukebox. When you're sick, music is a great help. Once in Texas, I kicked a habit on weed, a pint of paregoric, and a few Louis Armstrong records. Almost worse than the sickness is the depression that goes with it. One afternoon, I closed my eyes and saw New York in ruins. Huge centipedes and scorpions crawled in and out of empty bars and cafeterias and drugstores on 42nd Street. Weeds were going up through cracks and holes in the pavement. There was no one in sight. After 5 days, I began to feel a little better. After 8 days, I got the chucks and developed a tremendous appetite for cream puffs and macaroons. In 10 days, the sickness had gone. My case had been postponed. Roy came back from his 30-day cure on Rikers Island and introduced me to a peddler who was pushing Mexican H on 103rd and Broadway. During the early part of the war, imports of H were virtually cut off, and the only junk available was prescription M. However, lines of communication reformed, and heroin began coming in from Mexico, where there were poppy fields tended by Chinese. 103rd is a subway stop, a crowded block. This is junk territory. Junk haunts the cafeteria, roams up and down the block, sometimes half crossing Broadway to rest on one of the island benches. A ghost in daylight on a crowded street. You could always find a few junkies sitting in the cafeteria or standing around outside with coat collars turned up, spitting on the sidewalk and looking up and down the street as they waited for the connection. In summer, they sit on the island benches, huddled like so many vultures in their dark suits. The hipster bebop junkies never showed at 103rd Street. The 103rd Street boys were all old-timers. Thin, sallow faces, bitter, twisted mouths, stiff-fingered, stylized gestures. There is a junk gesture that marks the junkie like the limp wrist marks the fag. The hand swings out from the elbow, stiff-fingered, palm up. They were of various nationalities and physical types, but they all looked alike somehow. They all looked like junk. There was Irish, George the Greek, Pentapon Rose, Louis the Bellhop, Eric the Bag, the Beagle, the Sailor, and Joe the Mex. Several of them are dead now, others are doing time. Joe the Mex had a thin face with a long, sharp, twitchy nose and a down-curving, toothless mouth. Joe's face was lined and ravaged, but not old. Things had happened to his face, but Joe was not touched. His eyes were bright and young. There was a gentleness about him, common to many old-time junkies. You could spot Joe blocks away. In the anonymous city crowd, he stood out sharp and clear, as though you were seeing him through binoculars. He was a liar, and like most liars, he was constantly changing his stories, altering time and personnel from one telling to the next. Louis was a shoplifter who had lost what nerve he ever had. He wore long, shabby black overcoats that gave him the look of a furtive buzzard. Thief and junkie stuck out all over him, and Louis had a hard time making it. I heard that at one time he had been a stool pigeon, but at the time I knew him, he was generally considered right. George the Greek did not like Louis and said he was just a bum. Don't ever invite him to your home. He'll take advantage. He'll go on the nod in front of your family. He's got no class to him. George the Greek was the admitted arbiter of this set. He decided who was right and who was wrong. George prided himself on his integrity. I never beat nobody. George was a 3-time loser. The next time meant life as an habitual criminal. His life narrowed down to the necessity of avoiding any serious involvements. No pushing, no stealing. He worked from time to time on the docks. He was hemmed in on every side, and there was no way for him to go but down. When he couldn't get junk, which was about half the time, he drank and took goop balls. The fag was a brilliantly successful lush worker. His scores were fabulous. He was the man who gets to a lush first, never the man who arrives on the scene when the lush is lying there with his pockets turned inside out. A sleeping lush, known as a flop in the trade, attracts a hierarchy of scavengers. First come the top lush workers like the fag, guided by a special radar. They only want cash, good rings, and watches. Then come the punks who will steal anything. They take the hat, shoes, and belt. Finally, brazen, clumsy thieves will try to pull the lush's overcoat or jacket off him. The fag was always first on a good lush. One time he scored for $1,000 at the 103rd Street station. Often his scores ran into the hundreds. If the lush woke up, he would simper and feel the man's thigh, as though his intentions were sexual. From this angle, he got his moniker. He always dressed well, usually in tweed sport coats and gray flannels. A European charm of manner and a slight Scandinavian accent completed his front. No one could have looked less like a lush roller. He always worked alone. The H-caps cost $3 each, and you need at least 3 a day to get by. I was short, so I began working the hole with Roy. We would ride along, each looking out one side of the subway car until one of us spotted a plop sleeping on a bench. Then we would get off the train. I stood in front of the bench with a newspaper and covered Roy while he went through the lush's pockets. Roy would whisper instructions to me. A little left, too far, a little back. There, hold it there. And I would move to keep him covered. Often we were late, and the lush would be lying there with his pockets turned inside out. We also worked on the cars. I would sit down next to the lush and open the newspaper. Roy would reach across my back and go through the lush's pockets. If the lush woke up, he could see that I had both hands on the paper. An average night went more or less like this. We started work about 11 o'clock, getting on the uptown IRT at Times Square. At 116th, we spotted one and got off, but the flop got up and walked away before we could get near him. The shabby man with a wide, loose mouth accosted Roy and started talking. He was another lush worker. "The fag scored again," he said. "2 notes and a wristwatch down at 96th Street. Roy muttered something and looked at his paper. The man went on talking in a loud voice. "I had one come up on me. 'What are you doing with your hand in my pocket?' he says. 'For Christ's sake, don't talk like that,' Roy said and walked away from him. "Fucking wrong, bastard. There aren't many lush workers around now. Only the fag, the beagle, and that tramp. They all envy the fag because he makes good scores. If a sucker comes up on him, he pretends to feel his leg like he was a fag. Those tramps at 103rd Street go around saying, 'Goddamn fag,' because they can't score. He's no more a fag than I am." Roy paused reflectively. "Not as much, in fact." One night we got on the subway at Times Square. A flashily dressed man, weaving slightly, was walking ahead of us. Roy looked him over and said, "That's a good fucking mooch. Let's see where he goes." The mooch got on the IRT, headed for Brooklyn. We waited, standing up in the space between cars, until the mooch appeared to be sleeping. Then we walked into the car, and I sat down beside the mooch, opening the New York Times. The Times was Roy's idea. He said it made me look like a businessman. The car was almost empty, and there we were, wedged up against the mooch with 20 feet of empty seats available. Roy began working over my back. The mooch kept stirring, and once he woke up and looked at me with bleary annoyance. "Let's get off," I said. "No, this is a good mooch. He's sitting on his overcoat, and I can't get into his pocket. When I tell you, fall up against him, and I'll move the coat at the same time." Now, for Christ's sake, that wasn't near hard enough. "Let's get off," I said. I could feel fear stirring in my stomach. "He's going to wake up." "No, let's go again." "Now, what in hell is wrong with you? Just let yourself flop against him hard." "Roy," I said, "for Christ's sakes, let's get off. He's going to wake up." I started to get up, but Roy held me down. Suddenly he gave me a sharp push, and I fell heavily against the mooch. "Got it that time," Roy said. "The poke?" "No, I got the coat out of the way." The mooch was only half asleep. I expected him to jump up and yell at any minute. Finally, I heard Roy say, "I got it." "Let's go, then." "No, what I got is a loose roll. He's got a poke somewhere, and I'm going to find it. He's got to have a poke. I'm getting off." "No, wait." I could feel him bumbling across my back so openly that it seemed incredible that the man could go on sleeping. It was the end of the line. Roy stood up. "Cover me," he said. I stood in front of him with the paper, shielding him as much as possible from the other passengers. There were only 3 left, but they were in different ends of the car. Roy went through the man's pockets openly and crudely. "Let's go outside," he said. We went out on the platform. The mooch woke up and put his hand in his pocket. "All right, Jack," he said. "Give me my money." Roy shrugged and turned his hands out, palm up. "What money? What are you talking about?" "You know goddamn well what I'm talking about. You had your hand in my pocket." Roy held his hands out again in a gesture of puzzlement and deprecation. "Oh, what are you talking about? I don't know anything about your money." "I've seen you on this line every night. This is your regular route." He turned and pointed to me. "And there's your partner right there. Now are you going to give me my dough?" "What dough?" "Okay, just stay put. We're taking a ride back to town, and this had better be good." Suddenly the man put both hands in Roy's coat pockets. "You son of a bitch," he yelled. "Give me my dough." Roy hit him in the face and knocked him down. "Why, you," said Roy, dropping abruptly his conciliatory and puzzled manner. "Keep your hands off me." The conductor, seeing a fight in progress, was holding up the train so that no one would fall on the tracks. "Let's cut," I said. We started down the platform. The man got up and ran after us. He threw his arms around Roy, holding on stubbornly. Roy couldn't break loose. He was pretty well winded. "Get this mooch off me!" I hit the man twice in the face. His grip loosened and he fell to his knees. "Kick his head off," said Roy. I kicked the man in the side and felt a rib snap. The man put his hand to his side. "Help!" he shouted. He did not try to get up. "Let's cut," I said. At the far end of the platform, I heard a police whistle. The man was still lying there on the platform, holding his side and yelling, "Help!" at regular intervals. There was a slight drizzle of rain falling. When I hit the street, I slipped and skidded on the wet sidewalk. We were standing by a closed filling station, looking back at the elevated. "Let's go," I said. "They'll see us. We can't stay here." We started to walk. "There's sure to be an alarm out for us," Roy said. "Keep a lookout for cars. We'll duck in the bushes if any come along. They'll be figuring us to get back on the subway, so the best thing we can do is keep walking." The drizzle continued. Dogs barked at us as we walked. "Remember our story if we get nailed," Roy said. "We fell asleep and woke up at the end of the line. This guy accused us of taking his money. We were scared, so we knocked him down and ran. They'll beat the shit out of us. You have to expect that." "Here comes a car," I said. "Yellow lights, too." We crawled into the bushes at the side of the road and crouched down behind a signboard. The car drove slowly by.